You're listening to the Mike on the Right podcast.
Hey friends, and welcome to the Mike on the Right show. This is episode 25, which is a big milestone for me. October 20th, 2025. Thank you so much for listening. Continue to like, share, subscribe, 5-star ratings, tell your friends, and remember this entire show, all 25 episodes, can be found at mikeontheright.com, which is just going to take you to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts. You will find us there. Also YouTube, which has the video option if you're not just looking for audio. It feels great to be back in the saddle after a wonderful time away with my wife on a trip before our twins arrive. If you're not personal friends with us, we have twins on the way, which is super exciting. And so just Kristen and I were able to get away, which was a fantastic time. We had friends and family who took such good care of our son, but it's good to be home. It's good to be back. Now, I know there's a lot going on in the world. In the United States, we've got protests, we've got job uncertainty. There's also good things too, a good economy. There's so many things going on around us. And normally I would sit here and talk about that, at length, and that's partially why you listen to this show. But I had a friend encourage me that for episode 25, it's kind of a special milestone episode. I guess just for the number. But my friend encouraged me, hey, you've got a lot of listeners that know you, but you also got a lot of listeners that don't know you, who you are, how you were brought up, where you came from. And so you should do an episode at some point, and 25 kind of seemed right, on who you are, why are you the way that you are? And so if you know me or you're not interested, of course, you can certainly pass this episode. I hope you do listen. But they encouraged me to do this, and I think that was right. And so I'm calling this episode Mike Neal Origins, just because it sounds cool. And I'm going to tell you about why I've done what I've done, where I've gotten to be, why I've gotten to be there, why I do this podcast, and I don't know how long, this podcast will last. I don't ever expect it to just, go anywhere and to be the next Rush Limbaugh or anything like that. But, I felt like for a time I wanted to do this and express some opinions and educate my friends and meet new people through the process and what have you. And so I just want to give you a little brief background of me, your host, your favorite conservative podcaster, Mike Neal. And so, if you don't know me, because otherwise I would have told you, I was born in the region. What is the region? That is Northwest Indiana, which everyone has an interpretation of what that is. But us regionites say Lake and Porter County and then like Michigan City. All of LaPorte County wants to be in the region. Fine, but that's kind of the general region. And that's where I was born and raised. Born in Crown Point, Indiana, graduated from Valparaiso High School, lived in Cherville until I moved to Indianapolis. And through my life, my early life, I always kind of had, this interest in politics, even at a young age, watching elections and those kind of things, but I also wanted to be a meteorologist in high school. And then when I went to college, I found out that was way too much math and science for me. More of the science. Math is not necessarily my weak suit, but some of the scientific stuff was. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. But I took an interest, in politics. And in 2000, my youth pastor, Dr. Ron Johnson, at the church that I grew up in, decided that he was going to throw his hat in the ring to run for state representative in District 19, which was, at the time, this conglomeration of Crown Point, parts of Crown Point that went all the way down to Newton County. It was kind of a weirdly drawn district. And he decided to run. And what do you do when you're 12 or 13 years old? You help your youth pastor, right? And so I got the opportunity, to knock doors. I got opportunity to make phone calls, and I'm not saying I did the best or the greatest. It was 12 or 13, right? But we did the work. He wasn't successful in that campaign. Shelley Vandenberg, who was the incumbent at the time, won. But it really kind of stirred something in me, even more than just at 12 or 13, my limited understanding of what politics and government really was. Fast forward a couple of years later, and our youth ministry, led by Brock Meyer, but also some other key pastors in my life. Dr. Ron Johnson and John Plotner, and some other folks who may or may not be listening to the show. It doesn't matter if they are. Took a group of us that were kind of in that college age area and kind of, kind of handpicked to go on this trip to Taylor University and kind of have a couple of days as kind of this retreat to learn and to grow and to pray and to kind of figure out what are some of us called to. Maybe we'll figure out at that. Maybe we won't. And I remember Brock Meyer. I've always kind of had this passing interest in politics that kind of stemmed from the early 2000s, even though I was well too young to understand. And as we were having these group conversations and individual conversations over this weekend, one of the things he's said, it was just kind of a prophetic moment. And I believe in as a born again Christian, I believe in the prophetic nature of our faith. And he said, I really feel that you may be called to this government, political arena, public service. I don't know how, I don't know where, but you need to turn your interest into a passion. And so at that point, I had kind of started to we got to put it kind of came to me, we got to put an organization together that can get young Christian conservatives involved in the political movement. But at the time, I didn't understand enough about political parties and things like that. And then also, that was all kind of right around, the building of the Tea Party, and obviously some tension with the Republican Party, which is where I would most identify based on the values of my life. But me and a couple of friends, Tim DeLuca and Megan Mercier, she was Megan Bright at the time, and Hannah Staub at the time, now Hannah Tippett, put together an organization called the Young Conservatives Alliance. And it was just an organization, but it was kind of a loose group of folks that we could use this organization to focus on political races and also, make connections ourselves. And we got involved in some races in 2010 up in Lake County, about 5 of them. One of them was state rep race. And we just simply, showed up. What can be done, and in that race, of course, 4 of those races were victorious. One of them was not. Again, that District 19 race that everybody had trouble, with that with that district until it was redrawn, and we knocked more doors than anyone had ever. People had taken interest in us because we had knocked so many doors and we had made kind of this impact, and it allowed our group to get invited to the State House and be there for some swearing-ins in 2011, swearings-in, and touring the State House and getting to connect and know some people, some other internships and things like that, which then led me in 2012 to 2 things. One, again, we had run this organization, Young Conservatives Alliance, great organization. And at that point, it kind of had served its purpose because it was like, okay, well, we're young and we're conservative and, we can knock doors and we can certainly do that. But also the Lord kind of spoke to me in that, hey, yes, you need a group of young people, Christians and conservatives, and maybe even conservatives that aren't necessarily, Bible-believing Christians. How do you engage and involve a movement, though it is, for me, again, rooted in my faith? And the Lord spoke to me very clearly that, look, the Republican Party, for you, just like anyone that's a Democrat, but the Republican Party is a vehicle. It is the vehicle that operates and works. Is it perfect? No. But is it the vehicle that gets people elected and gets good people into office to lead and to move the ball forward on any particular issue? And so the Lord called me to public service, through political service through the party. So I got involved, got elected precinct committeeman, became chairman of the Lake County Young Republicans, which later led me to be state chairman. We'll kind of get to that. And in 2012, my pastor decided he was going to run again. My youth pastor, who now at this point is like a senior associate pastor to his dad, he decided to run again. And because we had made such waves in 2010 as a group, I had the opportunity to kind of, start learning the consulting process and work for the campaigns. But the big boon for me was the House Republican Campaign Committee hired me to run Dr. Ron's race and a couple of others. up in Northwest Indiana as a field manager, and that was huge for me. That was transformative in my life. Because it was real. Not that the other stuff wasn't real, but yeah, it was volunteer, and you need volunteers, and not everybody is called to be, physically working in this. But so I'm not downing volunteerism, but for me, it was a huge step in the journey that the Lord was going to take me. And so I got to help run those races. We ended up being victorious in 2. Again, District 19 eluded us for one more cycle before somebody else was able to win it in 2014. But it really catapulted my career, and then I got to do more consulting in 2014, and then that's how I ended up getting, 2 things. One, I ran for office. I don't know if some of you don't know this story. The friends that are closest to me certainly would know, and my political friends would certainly know, that in 2014, while I was running like 11 local races as a consultant, like 7 days before the election in St. John Township. So I lived in Cherville. It was a Crown Point address. I lived in Cherville proper, and I was running a lot of races kind of in that district, in that area. And one of the township board members passed away unexpectedly. He was like 84, wonderful man, Al Hansen, wonderful guy, passed away. And in Indiana law, if you die, I think, but 5 days before the election, your name your name doesn't come off the ballot. Someone can replace, or your name can come off the ballot and someone can replace you. If it's 5 days, you get voted for, and then someone's gonna have to caucus you in. It was this whole conglomeration. And so the county chair at the time, Dan Durnell, who's now a wonderful state senator and a wonderful friend, he asked me, "Hey, you're already entrenched here. You're running races here. You're doing the door to door. We got to make sure we win this seat." At the time, it was a 3 Republicans on all 3 seats. There was a complete set of Democrats on the other side. We got to make sure that we keep the majority on the township board. He asked me to step in, and so I got I filled the vacancy, and in 6 days ran a campaign that was victorious. Then who comes knocking? But Mike Pence, governor of Indiana, who I also got to help in 2012, kind of connected to all of the work and the momentum we were doing at HRCC with the different candidates. Of course, he was a huge supporter of Dr. Ron and all of the Northwest Indiana folks that were running on the Republican side. And so, they knocked and said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming to work for us?" I'm like, "Well, guys, I just got elected to a seat that I just took over, running for 6 days ago." And I said, "If I get sworn into this, I'm going to stay here. So if you guys make an offer." They did. And it was clearly the Lord. I mean, it was clearly like, you're done here. You're done consulting here. Someone will certainly take your place. You won the race. Now the Republicans can certainly caucus, but you've got to take office, the oath of office first. So I took the oath, and then like a couple days later resigned and moved to Indianapolis to work on Mike Pence's staff in the governor's office. But that all stemmed from, Brian Bosma and Mike Gentry and Josh Kelly, at HRCC, who hired me, and Dan Dumazich was a part of, making sure I got there. And so, and the Young Conservatives Alliance and the Young Republicans and all of that kind of, work and ascension, the Lord put me in places and rooms that I had no business being in. And then that catapulted things, for me. It brought me then later to the Utility Commission, and it brought me to the Treasurer's Office, and it brought me to be able to do advance work for the President and Vice President of the United States while in office, and just an incredible story for me. It continues to blow me away that I tell it. Like I can't believe this is where I'm at. I can't believe this is what I've gotten to do. And there's been times where the Lord has stopped things and redirected and moved, and I'm in a season there, right now. But for me, public service, for me, I believe I'm called to public service in some fashion. Maybe that's part-time, maybe that's full-time, and maybe the Lord will shift that at some point. But all of that back from that Young Lions deal in like 2009 to today, those sweet moments that the Lord intervened and redirected and opened doors and made relationships and connected with people and made a way to what I get to do today. And it's even, I'm president of the Westfield Washington Township Plan Commission, and working my way up in, Hamilton County politics and things like that. It astounds me what the Lord has done. And I view public service as my mission field. And when we talk about that from a Christian perspective, a lot of times we think mission field, well, people are going to, Botswana, or people are going to Mongolia, or people are going to wherever, right? Or even local missions. People are doing missions work up in Chicago, or on the West Coast, or on the East Coast, or in impoverished communities, or in disaster zones, or all those things. But for me, and I certainly say go on a mission trip. It'll change your life. But for me, the Lord called me, I believe, to this mission field to be salt and light, to be a representative of Jesus, but ultimately as a Christian, to serve people in this way. And there's certainly a spiritual aspect to everything in life, right? I'm pro-life, and I'm pro, I'm pro-Bible, and the foundation that the Lord set for us and for our life, and I'm all those things. But also, a lot of Christians in this field, and I've said this, if you're a regular listener of the show, I've said this over and over and over again, that doesn't mean that that's all we show up for. Those are, of course, some of the big ticket items that our faith, commands us, that the Lord commands us, if we're in this business to stand up for. But also sometimes the potholes need filling, and the water needs to make sure it gets where it goes, and economic development needs to happen. And that is still working on the things that the Lord cares about. He cares about all of those things. And I think that's funny to say. Like, does Jesus really care about potholes? Jesus cares about us serving our fellow man. And in this area, this is what I believe I'm called to, and other folks that are in this arena are called to. Not everybody's doing it for the faith aspect, and that doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong. But for those of us who are Christian conservatives, for me, I didn't ever think, in middle school and high school and all that stuff, that this is what I would be doing. I would have picked some sort of profession and gotten into it. And, if you look at my resume, it's wild. It's wild. Getting 3 college degrees, finality of a master's. Thought about going back again. Not sure if I will. To working on utilities and working in politics and working in executive leadership at the state level and working in the private sector in pipeline construction and doing my own consulting gig and working at a church and all these things. And it's just kind of this hodgepodge that makes me who I am. But it's the process that has led me to this. And so I say this all to say, again, that this is the origin story of me and why I decided, here and now in the last several months to do a podcast. Again, I don't know. This could end tomorrow. This could end 10 years from now. This could have to take up, who knows what the Lord will do through this show. For me, it's just a personal passion project. And if nobody was listening, if I got to go back and listen to myself, my wife listened, and a couple friends, fair enough. I'm not looking to make money. I'm not looking to become famous. I'm not looking, I'm looking to say what's on my heart. And I'm going to say this right now, and this isn't anything. If you're listening today and you're struggling with direction, if you're listening to this today and you're struggling with calling, and maybe you don't think you're hearing where the Lord is pushing you, or maybe you think that there's a change coming, or maybe you're just confused, or maybe you've lost your job, or maybe you've lost whatever. What the Lord calls you to, sometimes it's simply about showing up. And the ones that show up are the ones that get to go down the path, get to go down, for me, it was knocking on doors. The base level of politics is knocking doors, phone calls, licking envelopes, whatever that is, right? Driving around candidates, driving around elected officials. It's the entry level of what folks do in this business. And if you're unwilling to do that, if you think you're just going to make the big speeches and you're going to go to all the big things and get to all the big political events and be invited to those things, that's just not how it works. You got to show up, and those that show up get promoted. People who don't show up aren't thought about, or people who think they're going to go from 0 to 100 unless the Lord elevates you there. Not saying that it can't happen, but that 100% is how it starts in any area. And so for me and my friends, that when we started the Young Conservatives Alliance, we simply showed up. And look what the Lord has done we started that organization in the concept at that Young Lions event. I've still got it here somewhere in my office, the moleskin notepad, and it's the structure of the organization. I drew it like after I was challenged by Pastor Brockmeyer to do that, I immediately that day at lunch, instead of sitting with my friends, I got my food and I went over to like a seat by the window and I just started etching and sketching and writing and thinking and writing names and writing positions and what they would do and how we would raise money and what effect we would have and what things we would do and what speakers we would have. We put on events and try to build this up again, not to build fame, but to a seriousness of purpose. I drew out a seriousness of purpose. And so that organization starts at, the end of 29, early 2010, whatever that event was. I know at that point we started working in the primary into the general of 2010, but we simply showed up with a plan, with a seriousness of purpose, and we did what we said we would come to do, not overpromise and underdeliver, but the opposite, underpromise and overdeliver. Which opened doors for so many, but I can only speak, to my situation. I never would have gotten hired at HRCC because of that, and I never would have met the Pence people because of it, and I never would have been hired by Mike Pence because of it, and I never, the Lord opened that door in that moment. That was seated in a conversation around a fire pit at Taylor University in Upland, Indiana, with a youth pastor who I adore, and so I say all this to say now, who knows what the next step is for me. I'm in a season of waiting. Again, this could be the last episode of this show. This show could go on for 10 years. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know what the Lord will do, but I stand here today because I was obedient and said yes. Now that doesn't mean it's been perfect. I have in politics, I have scorned friends. I've made enemies where I shouldn't have. I've said the wrong things. I've had the wrong positions, or I've had the right positions and I've communicated them poorly. I've been mad. I've been angry. I've been mean. But then I've been friendly. I've been kind. I've been joyous, and I view myself as a happy warrior. But this has been all kinds of bumps and scrapes. And to those folks, I've tried to do my best to say, I apologize for the jerk that I was. I thought, when you're young, you just think you know it all. When you're young, you think you're invincible. And in a day and age today in politics, even different from when I started getting involved, it's way different now than it was then. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who say that in every decade and generation that goes back in politics. There were certainly big and bad times in our nation where, there was probably maybe more division. But right now it just feels like there's so much, and it's tough. This is such a tough season to be in this area, because we are yes, are we fighting, conservative versus liberal, Republican versus Democrat, what to take your pick, right? But in the end, there is a spiritual overarch to all of it. And politics falls in, like I've talked about, the 7 mountains of culture, all of which are under the lordship of Jesus Christ. And I say this 100% over and over and over, and I will continue to repeat it, that there's a spiritual battle going on, and politics is a part of that. Just like if you're in the medical field, or if you're in education, or if you're in the arts and entertainment, take your pick. All of them have their controversies. All of them have intertwinements with, politics isn't a lot of these things in government because they regulate so many things and so much. But show up and stand up in whatever arena the Lord has called you to. That can be the home, raising your children, to be the next generation of leaders. That could be in the job that you're in, if you're elected to office, if you're in the medical field, if you're, writing the next big screenplay. And maybe it has nothing to do with anything spiritual, but it all brings glory to God. And so keep showing up. Keep showing up. I've struggled with times of great blessing and abundance, and times of not doing a whole lot, or I'm in this season and it feels really difficult or hard, or I'm in this season and I feel like I've blown up on all of my friends and everybody, and I took a political position that I don't ever want to take a political position that ends relationships in my life that the Lord otherwise would allow to continue. I have tons of friends who disagree with me politically. But our iron sharpens iron, and they know that you're a good. I watched all kinds of folks at the No Kings protests, and I'm not going to get into that today, because that's not what this story is about. This is not what the origins story is about. But I had several friends who were a part of those things, And you know what? Because I'm called to a relationship with them, it didn't change how I viewed them. It didn't change how I felt. I mean, I disagree with them vehemently in some respects, though I support their right to peacefully protest and make their voice heard. But, if they called tonight and said, let's go get a drink, we're going. Because that's who I believe I'm called to be, and to be loving and compassionate. That doesn't mean that changes my values. It doesn't mean it changes, my motives. It doesn't mean it changes my morals. But how I say it, how I go about it, how I do it, I stand firm, but in love. And so all of this story has that's who it's turned me into. It's who I am. And so I don't know what the next phase is for me. I don't know what the next phase is. This is not some sort of announcement of any kind, but I wanted, again, as we close this show, wrap up, I was encouraged by, some friends to do this as the 25th episode is kind of this mile marker, with all the listens that we've had. Again, this is not a huge show. It's not widespread, but it's been a very core group of listeners, and I thank you so much. Again, if you're my friends, you knew this whole story, and if you stuck with it, God bless you. For those of you who don't know me, and now you understand a little bit more, maybe you'll stop listening to the show. Maybe it'll cause you to listen more. I don't know, but for me, my message is this is a spiritual battlefield. Politics and government is a mission field for me, and showing up is the best way. Again, nothing is beneath you. If you want to be a leader, nothing is beneath you. And those are the core tenets that I've held in my life that I want to encourage you with. And there are times and seasons where things are easy. There are times and seasons where there's abundance. And there's times and seasons where there's scarcity and it's difficult and you feel wayward and you feel like the Lord's not speaking, or you feel, but the Lord has his hands on it all. And so if I can do that one thing at the end of this, and instead of talking about my story, is just be encouraged in that. That's tough, but be encouraged in that, because he is always faithful, and he always comes through. And I've seen it in my life, and I know that we will see it again in all the different areas that we are struggling with or we are waiting for the Lord on. So again, thank you so much for listening. Again, the 25th episode, this is huge. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. Continue to like, share, subscribe, 5-star ratings, MikeOnTheRight.com. You can find all episodes there. It takes you to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of those things where you can find all those apps, you can find our show. Thank you so much, and have a great week.